Everybody out there. I'm especially excited today to be able to interact with Mayor Liccardo, who's here and has been here before in the villages and always is a very dynamic presence. So we're going to really enjoy having him today, and that'll be great. So what I'd like to do is just to say we have a number of topics that people have already indicated, and some of them would include the George Floyd situation, the ruling of George Floyd, the pandemic, affordable housing, transportation, and Google's entrance into downtown and the whole plan for what's going on down there. And those are some of the major topics that I will be asking him about as well. And just want to give you a little introduction about Mayor Sam Liccardo, which I found to be quite interesting in reading some more about him. He was Mayor Liccardo, of course, he was first elected as mayor in November of 2014, and he was reelected in 2018 with an impressive 78.5% of the vote. I think that sounds really great. He's also the leader of the California Big City Mayors Coalition. Prior to becoming mayor of the city, Liccardo represented a third district on the city council, where he focused on improving public safety, revitalizing the downtown, expanding affordable housing, and making San Jose an environmental leader. Mr. Liccardo also served in the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office as a prosecutor of sexual assault and child exploitation crimes as a federal prosecutor. His work in the community, including teaching political science at San Jose State University, serving on the boards of several affordable housing organizations, and enabling BART to commence service to San Jose under budget and ahead of schedule in early 2018. Mayor Liccardo and his wife Jessica live in downtown North Side, which boasts San Jose's oldest neighborhood association. They live a block from where Jessica grew up, and a dozen blocks from the neighborhood grocery store that Sam's paternal grandparents operated in the 1940s and 50s. Wow, that's really some strong local credentials there. On his mother's side, Mayor Liccardo's ancestors were among the first Mexican settlers in the Bay Area, while his maternal grandmother immigrated from Ireland. Quite interesting. After graduating from Bellarmine College Prep, Sam attended Georgetown University. He was captain of the Georgetown heavyweight crew and graduated magna cum laude in 1991. Sam then enrolled at the Harvard Law School and the Kennedy School of Government, graduating with a law degree and a master's degree in public policy. Very impressive resume. And if Mayor Liccardo was here, we'd love to welcome him. I don't know if he is. Is the mayor here yet?
He's not here yet, Bob. And as with all Democratic meetings, we bite our fingernails and hope that he's going to be able to turn up on time. I know he's currently finishing a meeting, so you can carry on and keep us entertained for a few more minutes, please.
Okay, so anyway, this seems like it'll promise to be a really dynamic session, and he's basically, we're planning on about 30 minutes with him is what he is allocated. So we'll see what happens. I plan on asking some of the questions up front, and then maybe with about 10 minutes left, we'll open the floor to whatever questions you as our faithful listeners out there may have. So that's kind of the plan. So
it might be interesting, just while we wait for him to turn up, to mention what was in the San Jose Mercury today about the Sharks being quite upset about the Google development. That will be a hot topic. But just to clarify to everybody, we have a 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. session, 2 to 2:30 p.m. session booked on the mayor's calendar. And he has a meeting before us and a meeting after us. So we're actually dealing with someone who's really working. But look who's here.
You get a little work out of me.
Welcome, Mayor Liccardo. I just introduced you, gave your very impressive resume, I have to say, and actually enjoyed researching a little bit more about you. I didn't tell the group, by the way. I saw that you were also on TV. You were a guest in Silicon show about Silicon Valley. So you're
You
also.
probably noticed they didn't ask me to come back, so I didn't get a day gig that way.
So, Mayor, the plan was a lot of our folks have asked questions in advance.
Great,
I'm your moderator, so I thought maybe I'd toss some questions your way. But
sure.
if you want to just start with some opening remarks, and then I'll go from there and ask you some questions.
Yeah, thank you.
And
I'm happy to talk.
then we're going to open up to the whole group probably with about 20 after or so. Okay.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you
Okay.
for allowing me a little time here to talk about what's happening in our city. And I'm going to apologize in advance. You're going to see that I'm sweating. I was literally running in here. I'm racing between appointments, so I appreciate everyone's patience with the sweaty mess that I've become. Nonetheless, I want to thank everybody who's been working hard on behalf of our progressive values in this club. Really thank you to each one of you, Tony Berg, President, Judy Owen, and Bob Lapidus, and Diana Nelson, and everybody on the board. Bob, thank you for introducing me. I want to just talk a little bit about the moment we're in right now, because it'd be hard to ignore it, as we've endured about the most painful year in anyone's memory over the last year.
Oh,
Certainly the pandemic, certainly civil unrest, serious issues of vetting over issues of race, the wildfires, everything else that we've endured. And I'd like to believe that through all this, there is some learning. And the learning, at least for those of us in government, those of us who are serving you, I hope has made us more nimble through these emergencies, that we're more responsive than we were a year and a half ago. And I know that will come as some surprise to some who see more trash outside, more homeless, and wondering, what do I mean by being more responsive? And of course, the reality is we're grappling with all those challenges amid a pandemic that has forced us to take hundreds of our employees and literally shift them into work they've never done before. In some cases, in many cases, we provided a few dozen meals, maybe a couple hundred meals to seniors every week at our senior nutrition centers. And we're not in the food distribution business, but suddenly, as a result of this pandemic, we were marshaling 2.5 million meals a week. Wow. In partnership with Second Harvest and others. And so we've really had to think differently. And I think in many ways, that is for the good. I think we're learning lessons. And I'll just give you a couple quick examples, and then I'll stop talking. I'd love to go right to your questions. As we think about this homelessness epidemic, which is going to continue well past this pandemic, certainly the idea is that the governor is championing around converting motels to housing is a great one. We actually started that ourselves in 2015, many years ago, and we had already been converting motels. But what we've also started doing is discovering how to build housing much more quickly and much more cost effectively. Because as we look at this crisis we have in homelessness, part of the crisis is frankly that it costs $700,000 to build a single apartment unit in an apartment building these days. And if you've got a homelessness crisis that consists of 10,000 human beings are living outside in the county of Santa Clara, you're not going to solve that problem $700,000 at a time. That is, for those of you who are doing the math, $7 billion. And we cannot tax you fast enough to pay for all that. So we've had to think a bit differently. And what this pandemic gave us an opportunity to do was to push the rules aside, cut through the red tape, and really move quickly. We've been working hard. I'm the head of this group called the Big City Mayors Coalition. And we've been lobbying with the governor, and the governor's been willing to suspend some of the challenges we've had, some of the obstacles, regulatory obstacles in getting housing built. And with those changes and with emergency regulations here, we began to build prefabricated modular housing for unhoused residents. And rather than taking 4 or 5 years, which is what a typical project takes to build with an apartment building, we were building them in 4 to 5 months. And rather than building at $700,000 a unit, we're building them at $100,000 a unit. And we've built 3 of these complexes already, 3 communities, and we've moved more than 300 of our residents off the street into permanent housing, transitional housing, really. They'll be there for a year or two, and we're trying to move them into more permanent housing thereafter. And these are dignified housing units. This is not tiny homes. These are, dorm rooms with bathrooms attached and community kitchens and so forth. So certainly we're learning how to move more nimbly to address homelessness. And I think that is to the better. And a lot of other cities are actually watching, and San Francisco is going to be adopting one of our projects soon. And we've got a fourth project under construction, hopefully in the next month. Then I think about the digital divide. This is something I've been working on for 4 or 5 years. We launched a digital inclusion fund, cutting a deal with industry, the telecom companies that were going to give us through fees that we had negotiated millions of dollars to help us address the big digital divide we have in our city, that every city has. And we were plodding along, but not making nearly enough progress. And then the pandemic hit and we suddenly discovered, boy, this is more than just a necessity. Our children aren't learning. We've got a lot of low-income families completely cut off. Their parents can't get access to health information. Their kids can't learn, and they can't find a job online because they're totally cut off. So, through partnerships that we've had, for example, the Eastside Union High School District that were already in place, and we were starting to build out Wi-Fi infrastructure to be able to get more of our families connected. We basically invested some money and decided, hey, let's go faster. We got some federal money. Let's see how fast we can make this happen. Well, now we're 1.5 years into this, and we have connected more than 100,000 residents living in East San Jose, primarily living around James Lick and Overfelt, and I believe Yerba Buena is now under construction. And we are hoping at the current pace that by the end of 2022, we will have 300,000 people connected through this public Wi-Fi infrastructure. That is a city the size of Pittsburgh or St. Louis. So that is a lot of folks. And a very ambitious undertaking that if we had tried this 10 years ago, would have cost a couple $2 billion using Google Fiber. But we're doing it with Wi-Fi technology and finding ways with partnership, for example, with Eastside, to make it happen more quickly. And so we're seeing different ways of responding that I hope are making us better as a government, serving our residents and as a city. And hopefully you're going to start to see those results. Now, obviously, we still have massive challenges to deal with, and they're not going away. One I know that is often asked is what's going on with all the trash out there. There's no question the city has been looking less than impressive over the last couple of years. So at the end of last year, I said, heck with it, let's put in $3 million into our rapid cleanup efforts so we can get more of our crews out there to respond when there are reports of illegal dumping. And I hope everybody's using their 311 app that is free to download on Apple or Android or whatever you want to use. It's all free, so please use it to report illegal dumping or graffiti or whatever it is that's going on, street lights that are out. It helps us respond. It also helps us understand where those problems are. So it's 311. Please use it. So we've invested some more money, but we're also thinking about things differently. We know there's a lot of unhoused residents who are tired of being pointed at as the problem. There's no question having a lot of people living outside is going to create a mess because as human beings, we all produce trash. But what we're seeing is we're now engaging in partnerships with Goodwill and Downtown Street Scene where we're employing, as a result of the budget that the council just approved, my message a couple of weeks ago now, up to 100 unhoused residents cleaning the city, getting paid an hourly wage and getting job training. And we've already moved through this program that we started a couple of years ago. We've already moved a couple dozen of these folks into jobs. One of them got a job with Tesla, and they're getting jobs at good pay because they're taking a work first approach. So we think we're discovering new ways of responding that you're going to start to see out there on the street. And I know because I've been monitoring the garbage situation really closely because I'm very frustrated about it. And we're finally getting a little bit of traction. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I'd love to hear your questions and concerns.
Great. So Mayor, what I was hearing from you was during a crisis, it sounds like your approach has been to view this as an opportunity. And I think that's very admirable because I think during a crisis, you can either bring out the best or the worst in people. So I applaud you for your leadership on that.
Well, it's brought the best out in our community. I should add, when we launched that Silicon Valley Strong website to try to get volunteers and so forth, we have had more than 5,000 people volunteer through that website, help distributing food and support vaccination centers. It has been incredible. So as a community, we are seeing people respond as we've never seen them before.
Fantastic. So as you know, in the George Floyd murder case, we all kind of riveted to our TV for over a week. And or so, and it's certainly changed the nation. And I know it's changed communities such as ours and others around the country. So I wanted to ask you, what is the impact of that on our police force here, and what's your take on the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah. Well, certainly, the verdict was no surprise to me. I think the evidence was very strong in this case. And it's fair to say that I'll just speak for myself. I think I'm hearing with different ears and I'm seeing with different eyes than I did prior to George Floyd's murder a year ago.
Right.
I think that's true for many of us here in the city. And I think the department is listening as it never has as well. I'd like to describe a little bit about what we've been working on already, and then what we still have, the work we have to do, because it's going to be really important for you as members of the community to be deeply engaged in this process moving forward. I'll start in reverse. The work we have going forward, now that we have a new chief, we've been holding up some of this process until we could get a new chief installed. Tony Mata is doing a great job. He's hitting the ground running and very community focused and very deeply concerned about building issues of trust in the community. So this effort that we announced last year around reimagining policing will now get underway, and we'll have very public meetings and very public discussions, and not all of them are going to be quiet or gentle. We know there's a lot of anger and that needs to be heard. And we're going to need to have some tough and honest conversations. So that reimagining policing effort will get underway in a matter of days or weeks, I believe, as we start the public process. Let me describe what we've done sort of in the meantime. I announced 9 initiatives that I thought would be important for reforming and creating greater accountability and transparency in our police department. And I say, I want to use the word reforming carefully, because I don't think people in this city, I shouldn't say that. I don't think the media necessarily appreciates how much this department has done in prior years to lean into issues around transparency and accountability relative to other cities throughout the country, whether it was being among the first to deploy body-worn cameras, or really accelerating training of bias-based policing, of what we call critical incident training and dealing with individuals with mental illness, and really measuring with using hard data and asking outside experts at University of Texas and Stanford and elsewhere to study the data of every traffic stop, every detention, every arrest, based on race, on gender, on all kinds of issues, and to identify for us where we've got problems and expose that to the public. And that report's been online, by the way, for a couple of years now. So there are things that we've been leaning in on. That's not to say there's not a lot more work to do, but I think it's important for folks to appreciate we've been pushing for some time on this. We've just got to push harder. And where I've tried to push is in several ways. One is around basic transparency. Body-worn camera footage we know is all critically important for the public to understand what's going on. And too often what we've seen in the past is a critical incident. It makes the news, and you don't really know exactly what happened because body-worn camera footage is part of the investigation. They don't release it. So I basically put a memo forward saying, look, when the public wants us to release body-worn camera footage, let's do it quickly. And let's have a simple hearing in front of the Rules Committee and get it done.
Makes a lot of sense.
And the hope is that at least it'll answer some immediate questions. And frankly, it'll answer questions that I think may surprise some folks about what exactly our officers are dealing with quite often out there on the street. I think there's a lot of assumptions about how officers respond that may not always be reflective of reality, because the truth is these officers are showing incredible restraint on many, many circumstances. Those circumstances where they don't are obviously situations where we all need to be very concerned, but I think people will be surprised by how much restraint is shown. Then I really focused in 2 primary areas going forward. One is trying to reform how it is we investigate officer misconduct. Throughout the country, the standard approach is you have an internal affairs unit, and that is a unit within the police department. They report to the chief. And I think we're beyond the point in the United States of America where Americans believe that police should be policing themselves.
Right.
So I've been pushing to move investigations now outside the police department to the independent police auditor. Yeah. We are underway now with a consultant that's going to help us understand how we can do that and what the variations are in different models of external investigations. It actually hasn't been done, to my knowledge. So we're going to be treading on some pretty interesting ground here. And we're going to make some transitional moves in the meantime, I think, in negotiations with the police union. The second area where we really are focused is around police misconduct and discipline. And there's a process in place in nearly every big city called arbitration. And that process is never open to the public. Nobody understands what happens. It's not transparent in any way. The arbitrators aren't accountable to anybody, not a judge, not anyone else. And so these unelected arbitrators who have incentives to kind of capitulate in various ways so they can continue to arbitrate in other cases will yield some pretty surprising results. And we saw that ourselves back in 2015 or 16, when we had an officer who was tweeting in a way that was taunting Black Lives Matter members. And the chief, Eddie Garcia, fired him appropriately. And the arbiter basically said, you got to rehire him. And the chief's hands were bound. And so we want to open that process up. We think there needs to be a much better process in terms of how arbitrators are selected, how their decisions are vetted publicly and so forth. That's what I'm pushing on. That's part of my 9-point plan. And that's going to be a big focus of mine as well.
That's great. So if I could switch topics, thank you for a very comprehensive answer on that, by the way. It's a very challenging time, I guess, for everyone. I wanted to ask you about the Google's entry into downtown San Jose, how you view the situation and what the longer term plan is, and just kind of give us the lay of the land on that, if you could.
Yeah, first, the good news is we're seeing broad community support for this, and for good reason. This is really a transformative investment in our city in ways that people often don't think of when they think of tech. And Google is, taking this seriously, this effort, community engagement. And we already have released information, the public documents that will all be considered by the council on May 25th, that include a development agreement and a whole host of other documents related to environmental impact report and others that describe how essentially Google's making more than $1 billion of public benefits available to this city in various forms.
Wow.
And it's billion with a B. And that takes a lot of different forms. It takes the form of affordable housing. Some of that is in response to fees that the city is imposing, right, for development. So they're paying a commercial impact fee. I think they're going to be the first company to pay one. And that's going to help us build 1,000 affordable rent restricted units at least, and at least 4,000 total housing units, mostly apartments and condos in that Dearborn area. We expect it's going to be very dense. Obviously, it's right around a train station or downtown, and that's where we'd expect very dense development. And so there's going to be enormous commitment of affordable housing, about 15 acres of parks and trails, a $200 million community benefits fund. It's created that will be managed by community stakeholders. They'll include, folks who may be experts in nonprofit management, as well as individuals who have lived experiences in homelessness. So it's going to be a range of members of the community. And that money is going to be used for everything from job training to homeless response to education. And so we're seeing an enormous amount of investment in the city, in addition to, by the way, 7 million square feet of commercial development that's going to bring thousands of people into our downtown core. And a part of the downtown that I think many of you know, if you're familiar with the Stevens Meat Dancing Pig sign out in downtown, it's largely surrounded, with the exception of Patty's Inn, an occasional bar or restaurant. It's pretty much a lot of parking lots and a few vacant industrial sites. So this is really going to transform our downtown. It's going to grow our downtown considerably. And I think most importantly for a lot of residents, it's going to create a there. There's a lot of public space that's being created around the middle of the development and along the creek that's really going to bring the creek and the river, Guadalupe River and Las Gas Creek, into the city in a way that's going to be very, very interesting. A lot of space for artisans and for retail and restaurants in this gathering space around the middle of the site, not far from the arena. And that's going to be really interesting. And I think it's going to make for a really vibrant project.
Wanted to ask you about the pandemic and the vaccination process, and
Yeah.
you hear a lot about people that are vaccine hesitant or reluctant, and just wanted to get your overall take on that before we open this up to our viewing audience here.
Yeah, I appreciate there's a lot of fear out there of the unknown. In this case, there's a lot that is known. One thing that's absolutely known is that for whatever news you've read about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the 15 or so individuals who have had adverse reactions, you're absolutely better off with
Absolutely.
that vaccine or any other vaccine than you are without it. We know what the probability is of serious illness or death if you don't have the vaccine. And I can assure you, there's a far greater chance and probability you're even going to suffer from the very side effect they're referring to, which is the I'm sorry, the clogging, the stroke related
Blood clots.
blood clots. There's actually a greater probability you suffer from blood clots from COVID than from the vaccine. In fact, a much greater probability. So it's really important for us to put these risks in context because yes, there are risks. We live in a risky world, but there is a greater chance, given the millions of people who have taken these vaccines at this point, you have a greater chance of getting hit by lightning.
Yeah, I think, Mayor, we all understand that here in the villages, but I just was addressing those segment of the population that are reluctant.
Oh, what are we going to do about it? Yeah. So this is really just going to take an on the ground effort. This is the heavy work of public outreach and public health. And I was out there 2 days ago, literally knocking on doors, answering questions in an apartment complex in South San Jose, and doing all I could to let people know about a free vaccination clinic that was, happening the next day. That's literally the kind of door-to-door work we're going to need to do. We encourage folks to participate. If you want to volunteer, go on the SiliconValleyStrong.org website, and there are ways to participate by volunteering. And you can also learn lots of information about how to get help if you're a small business and so forth. So we'd love to have your help.
Okay, great. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Diane, and she's got some questions from the group here that would like to.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Great.
We have a few questions that have accumulated. I'm going to take them in order. The first one is asking, I'm sure you have your eye on life after mayor. Can you share your thoughts with us?
I think at some point I'm going to have to get a real job. So that's if I got to pay the mortgage. In terms of politically, I can't say I have a very clear sense of that. And I'm not saying that because I'm being coy or that's what politicians say. I'm actually saying it because I haven't figured that all out. It's fair to say I've been pretty distracted over the last year or so with more weighty matters. And so I'm going to keep my head down for the rest of this year in particular, because we got plenty on our plate with this crisis we're dealing with. And I think I'll start thinking about that next year. The reality is that this is the best job in government, in my view. That is being a large city mayor. You have more opportunity to do more good, to have more of an impact on a community, particularly a community that you love, that you grew up in and around. And this is a great job. And I hear that from plenty of my friends who have left this gig to go on to the legislature or other kinds of jobs, who tell me, boy, I wish I were still mayor. In fact, first time I heard that was I was interning for Norm Mineta back in 1988.
Oh, wow. Oh, really?
And Norm, as many of you know, of course, was mayor here before he went on to go to Congress and then become, of course, Secretary of Commerce and Secretary of Transportation. And I remember him saying this to me when I was an intern in his office. And then I remember him saying it at a speech I was at when he was Secretary of Commerce. He said, people often ask me what my favorite title was, and it was always Mr. Mayor. And it's because you have the greatest opportunity to really engage with people in a way that matters. And, I have plenty of friends who are pretty disaffected by the challenges of dealing with everything from lobbyists to political parties to all the other issues. And they'd really like just simply to try to create good policy and have an impact. This is the place you can do it. So I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And I'm sorry I don't have a good answer for you.
That's a pretty good answer. Our next question was related to police reform, but I think you've handled that effectively. So I'm skipping that one. I'm going on to a note from Margaret saying, Mayor, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. The Villages is a place where small pilots can be tested. Are there plans to test new innovations, for example, Google Fiber, driverless cars, massive solar in family residence, et cetera, here in the Villages?
You know, as I recall, you guys had a driverless car in the Villages as a pilot, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, how'd that go?
They got bought out by a bigger company and have left us.
Oh no. Yeah, this is the challenge of dealing with startups. We've had that issue ourselves. We appreciate the fact that you guys are willing to be the laboratory. And we are also, as a city, we're very interested in being a laboratory. And by that, I mean, not because we want our residents to be guinea pigs, but rather because we think this is a place where technologies with great civic impact should be demonstrated, since we're in the heart of Silicon Valley here. So I appreciate the offer. Let me tell you first, Jordan's son is a really brilliant guy who heads up our Office of our Office of Technology and Innovation. And he's actually a former military guy, really fascinating life story, but he's got a very deep passion for tech and equity and how tech can be used to improve lives of our residents, particularly low-income residents. And he's got several projects under his belt. We would be happy to partner with any folks in the Villages who happen to know a small startup that wants to try one thing or another. We typically don't farm these out into neighborhoods because we, again, try to make sure if we're doing it, for example, if there's some element of safety testing, we want to make sure it's fairly contained. But we have several pilots going on now. So why don't I just offer Jordan's email in the chat, and that will help folks know how to reach Jordan, and I'll also include mine as well. And that way, if folks have particular ideas, they can reach out to us.
Excellent. That's a great idea. While you're doing that, can I overlap and start
Please.
asking you another question? Okay. Here in the Evergreen area, there are a lot of Asian American residents.
Yeah.
We are shocked and fearful of the incidents of hateful attacks to Asian Americans around the Bay Area. What safety measures are in place to help with this situation?
Yeah, it's horrible what we've seen in recent weeks, although the reality, of course, is hate crimes against Asian Americans and against many of our neighbors have been persistent reality for decades, since the beginning of this country. So let me describe at least what we're trying to do now. We've had an outreach effort with San Jose Police Department. I was walking along with them a couple of weeks ago in Little Saigon, and we're doing this in other places where we think there's a high concentration of patrons who may be Vietnamese American, Chinese American, South Asian, and making sure we're communicating with those business owners to indicate and put up the stickers that indicate they are a safe place for reporting of hate crime incidents, because we tend to find that these are happening in places where there's a high concentration of residents or patrons who are Asian American. And so we want to go to those locations first and make sure businesses know how to report it, and community centers and so forth, get the stickers up and let people know that there is a place where they can go where they will be safe, and that where the business owner will ensure that they're there until police can come. You know, bluntly, this is a war of attrition against hate that we've got.
Yeah.
And the only way we're going to win it is all of us being as clear and explicit as possible that we won't tolerate it. So that is certainly what I've tried to message. And I don't think anyone has yet found the solution. Obviously, racism has long been with us. I feel blessed to be in a city where I think relative to other large cities, we have a far higher level of appreciation for diversity and embrace of diversity. And I think that is to the credit of this remarkable community, because about 40% of us were born in a foreign country. That's extraordinarily high, by the way, among the 3 highest cities in the country. So So all I can say is I'll continue to voice what my values, and I think the values of our community. But in the meantime, if people have creative ideas, let me know. You know, we've got hate crime statutes in place. We've got a police department that's attuned to it. We have hate crimes hotlines. You know, we've got all the infrastructure in place. The question is, as a community, are we going to start to move people's hearts?
Very good. Thank you. I'm going to combine several questions because they're all related. If you'd give us a status on East Ridge light rail to BART.
Yeah, so the utility relocation is underway along Capitol Expressway, and the property acquisitions are all being completed now at the VTA board. So it's moving forward. It's fully funded. Some of the funding is technically held up by a lawsuit against Regional Measure 3, which was a measure that I pushed very hard for back in 2018, which passed, but it provides several million for this project. The good news is we've got other money, so we're going to move forward with what we're doing now, and the other money and the RM3 money will be in place when this lawsuit goes away, which I expect in the next year or two. This is going to take some time because this is it's separated, grade separated in places. That means it's a challenging construction project. And obviously you've got a very busy traffic corridor there in the meantime, and we want to minimize the disruption of that corridor. A recent issue came up over some of the utility relocation that might impact the Safeway off of Capitol. And so I've been fighting pretty hard to make sure we don't do anything that disrupts the Safeway, because I think we all appreciate having grocery stores, and particularly in East San Jose, where we know we don't have nearly enough.
All right.
I just got a message that it's time for you to go. And we
Oh.
really greatly appreciate your time, but we want to keep you
I'm
on.
sorry I talked so much.
Yeah. No, it was great. I'm surprised how many questions you were able to field, but I want to have you back, so I don't want to.
I'd be happy to.
So
Thank you,
thank
Bob.
you so much. It was great.
Bob, Diane, thank you. Great to be with you, and I look forward to coming back.
Thank
Good
you
luck.
again.
Take care now.
Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you, man.
Stay healthy.
And you. Thank you. Relax.
Well, that was wonderful.
That was quite inspiring, I felt. I don't know how everybody else felt. We had a very large
Still
audience.
with us? Are they still with us, or did they go?
Oh, yes, our audience is still here.
The audience is still here, but the mayor and his team have left us.
I'd like to thank this audience for your variety of questions. We still have several that had not been answered. Do we have any plans to follow up with these questions, Tony?
I can forward the questions to the mayor's office and try and get some written responses specifically for the Reed Hillview and the illegal alien question that I see on the list.
Chris says he'll take the questions, Tony, if you want to send it to him.
We will do that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
At which point, thank everybody for coming early. That was much appreciated. You were all very diligent, and we squeezed I think, a very productive half hour out of the 30 minutes we were allowed. And it was good to hear that he's ready to come back. He's always so inspiring and so uplifting that so much is going on that we didn't know about.
There are some references in the chat if the audience would like to get Jordan's son's email address. It's provided there, and Sam Liccardo's email address is provided there. So check out the chat and copy down those references, please.
My apologies to the group if you have enough time to get a question answered. And we're a little tight for time today, but we knew it would be a roller coaster ride. So thank you so much for your participation, and everyone have a great day.
And